Hey Doc, is David Moore one of your old students? I was recently watching one of your videos on shepherding, particularly the one about protecting well. And what a very timely section that was, because that's exactly what we're trying to do, especially in the COVID era, hence the face mask. So with that, I was just wondering if you could share some insights on what you have seen across the landscape of student ministry in terms of the best way to create the safest environment for students, to reassure parents that safety remains a priority, and also to make sure that the creative process is not hindered as we strive to teach students on what it means to be a Christ follower, to keep them engaged in those conversations.
Well, greetings everyone, and thank you, David, for that question. David Moore asked me this question 2 weeks ago, and he sent to me through text. And full disclosure, everyone, I want you all to know this. David and I have had a good relationship for many, many years. We're very, very close. So when I got David's video clip through text, I thought, I'm going to call the man right away. I mean, within 15 minutes of me watching his video, I thought, I need to call him. So I was like, David, what's up? What made you come up with these questions? What's going on? And here's what he told me. And again, full disclosure, he's cool with me sharing this with you. He says, Doc, I'm looking at different ministries handling things differently, and I just wondered, what are you seeing out there? And so I thought, David, that's a good question. So, but do you mind if I, instead of answering the questions dealing more with COVID and wearing masks, and that's kind of like what he was talking about, I said, do you mind if I, instead of answering it in more of a small or micro way, do you mind if I answer it more in a macro or larger way? And he said, absolutely. So that's what we're going to do. His 3 questions, yeah, the direct, let's say, context is during COVID-19 and during, we're now in month 9. Think about y'all, December 2020. We're here in month 9, right, of all of this. So yeah, it's still on the mind. It's still in our brains. It's still very real for us as we do ministry. But allow me to answer his questions in a little broader sense that could go beyond just the current season of COVID-19 to even to, let's say, something else takes place. So all that to say, here's his first question. What is the best way to create the safest environment? Okay, so I'm thinking right away, Mr. Snarky here is like, well, let's not do ministry. That's not an option. If you go back and look at episode 14, which is where his question comes out of, that was the Shepherding Well series. Protecting Well was our episode on 14. I talked about the principle here given in Proverbs, where the writer of Proverbs says, where there's no oxen, the crib is clean. In other words, if you want to have a perfectly clean ministry, don't have people, right? So we know that's not an option. We have to go make disciples, and it can get messy. So we know that's not the option. So how do we, in the context of going forward, still create this, basically this safe environment? 3 key words come to my mind. And here's what I have written down for you guys, and see if this makes sense. I have the first word is the word position, your position. So as your student pastor, student ministry director, whatever your term or title or position is, when you have this position, here's the key. Be mature in how you manage. Be mature in how you handle things. Be mature in how you handle yourself. We've all got our opinion when it comes to COVID-19. I'm sitting right now at my table here in my office. I have 3 empty chairs. If I had student ministry leaders in each chair, there was 4 of us sitting here, we would have 4 different opinions, right? If I just said certain key words like executive order, if I said the word mandate, if I said the word masks, we'd all have different responses to this, right? So what I'm saying is, while we all have our opinions, let's take the high road and how we use our position, how we handle ourselves to be mature with our students. I mean, we could be rolling the eyes and going, this is stupid, but we have to wear masks, or whatever your context is. Let's be mature about it. That's a principle I want to share. Second key word is the word situation. And by situation, I'm thinking more of your local church. Show wisdom, show discernment, lean into your church leadership. Whatever you do when it comes to creating a safe environment, just be on the same page as your church. I think you know this, just wanted to keep that as a reminder. Third area, or third key word, is your location. I'm thinking geographical, your location. Well, as you know, You're going to be following the protocols, the different policies set in place for your area. Again, you already know this. But just to make sure, the best way to create the safest environment is using your position well, be mature how you handled it. Okay. Also, your current situation in your church, being on the same page. And then thirdly, your own location. So that's the very quick answer, David, and all of us watching, right? It's just those basic principles there. How do we reassure parents that safety remains a priority? And David, that is a very, very, very valid question. So how do we reassure parents safety does remain a priority? I thought of 3 areas, so see what you guys think. We have to remain highly, and there's 1, 2, 3. We have to remain highly verbal. Highly verbal. In other words, communicate very well with the parents. What is our action plan? What is the action plan in place? Communicating that very, very well. So be highly verbal on your website, your Facebook, your Instagram, whatever your social media platforms are that you and your church are using. Make sure that all parents, it's easy to find, okay? As a parent, they don't have to dig deep. It's not a treasure hunt. It's not a Nick Cage movie back in the 90s or whatever on National Treasure. You don't have to go digging deep for it. It's right there. It's easy to find. Here's the protocols. Here's our action plan we're using. So highly verbal. Second area for parents is highly visible. And here's what I mean by this. Letting the parents know, communicate they are always welcome to attend, to watch, see what we're doing, drop your child off, stick around for a while. You know, in other words, we're saying to them, our ministry is very transparent, highly visible. Now, that should be in play regardless of COVID-19. That should have been in play pre-COVID. Remember that? It was so like last year. Anyway, so think about what were we doing then? Even more so we should be doing now. Communicating, we have a highly visible ministry. And as parents are coming through, of course, you know, with 20 parents, you could get 20 different thoughts. I understand it. I do understand it. But at least have an understanding, which then leads into our third area, highly valued. Communicate your respect and your appreciation for the parents. So I had these in order for a reason. You're communicating well, highly verbal. Make sure your ministry is highly visible. And then in the middle of that, make sure you're continuing to value parents. Let's get in the minds and the hearts of parents right now. I'm not letting this go right now. Let's stay right there for a minute. Some of the parents in your church have lost their jobs, or they're concerned they will lose their jobs, or their hours have been cut back. They've got weight that they've never carried before. They may have older parents they're concerned for, or they've been having to minister to. I still teach online to university students, and I can't tell you how many of them are concerned. These are adult learners, are concerned about their adult parents they're just really concerned about their own health. So you've got, you're basically parents are like anywhere from low end 35 years of age to maybe into their 50s. All right. So right now they're in that kind of sandwich generation where they've got not only their children, they've got adults, their parents that their aging parents they're working with. So really understand where parents are coming from. Their world right now is stressed. Parents, not only their own personal issues, family, finances, many of them have their own kids at home still. And you know this, right? They're actually having to educate their child, and they're maybe having to work from home. So the stakes are big for them right now. They've got a lot more pressure than they've probably ever had. So I would say, again, highly value, show respect and appreciation to these parents. Third question David has to do with creativity. He says, how do we make sure the creative process is not hindered? Well, David, I think the principle there, again, not just during COVID-19, but also in the greater picture, how do we have a creative ministry? But to bring it actually a little bit down into your context, I would say ask ministry leaders in your area what they're doing creatively. I've heard many different creative ideas, and I honestly don't want to unpack a lot of creative ideas here because those ideas may be dead within 4 to 6 weeks. We don't know. So as opposed to me giving specific little thoughts, I would say, here's the principle. Asking leaders in your area, what are they doing creatively? Second area I'd want you to consider, when you're seeking out other ministry leaders in your area is then also seek out other ministry leaders in your current situation. Here's what I mean. David, I know you're in a church, I think Cool Springs, 1,500 to 2,000 people. I could be off by that. That's when I visited your church many times. I love their church, by the way. I see about 1,500 to 2,000 people. I could be off. So I would say, look at a church your size in other locations around the state or even the country. So what's your current situation? I'm thinking more the size of your ministry. So all of you, think about the size of your ministry. Let's be honest. In the same community, you could have a ministry of 400 to 500 high school students, 40 high school students, 10 students in the entire ministry. Different size ministries are going to operate differently. So I would say really keep that in mind. First of all, find out, get some feedback from those in your area, but also get some feedback from people in your current situation, the size of your ministry. And the second key area I'd think of, other than just seeking out other ministry leaders, would be seeking out your own students. Sometimes we sit around and we as ministry leaders think, what can we do to make our ministry more, effective, right? And more creative, whether it's during COVID-19 or not. And we're asking as 30-somethings, as 40-somethings, as 50-somethings, or asking ourselves the questions about how to best minister to a 15-year-old. I have an idea. What if we just asked the 15-year-old? Let's just really think about this. Why don't we just be asking our students, what's working for you? How can we best minister to you? We all pivoted, I did, in our ministry here in Virginia. We all pivoted during the spring of this last year to, Zoom became our best friend kind of thing, or our worst enemy, whichever. And we all pivoted to social media platforms. And then we realized very quickly, our students didn't buy in. They did for a few weeks. Every youth ministry leader I've talked to, nationally speaking, has said the same thing. Students bought in for a few weeks, and then they were done. They voted with their feet. In other words, they didn't come anymore. Well, think about it. First of all, they're living on their iPhone. They're living on their iPad. They're living in front of a screen. We all have our thoughts on that anyway. They already lived their entertainment-wise on their screen. Then during the last school year, and now this school year, they're having to live in front of a screen. So yeah, kind of the last thing they want is us in front of a screen. So all I'm saying is ask them, how can we best connect with them and do it creatively? To bring this to a close, I have what I'm going to call 5 overall principles. 5 overall principles. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And here's the first one. First one is this: making disciples and sharing the gospel must be the highest priority. Got my Bible right here in front of me. 1 Corinthians 9. Woe unto me if I do not preach the gospel. Paul lays this out. He talks about, to the Jew I became like a Jew, to the Greek I became like a Greek. And David, remember when I called you, I said to you, this is the first scripture that comes to my mind. I have to be culturally sensitive where I live, because at the end of the day, it's not about the culture liking me. It's about the impact of the gospel on the culture. So my first and highest priority must always be, how am I making disciples? How are we sharing the gospel? Second overall principle. Jesus said in the Gospel of Matthew, when he's asked about the coin, now you may know where this is going now, ready? Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, unto God that which is God. I think sometimes that verse is used out of context, but the basic construct of that was very simple. Jesus was asked about taxes. Jesus is explaining we basically have dual citizenship. We live in the kingdoms of this world, and yet our hearts belong to the kingdom of heaven. So yeah, we have to keep in mind, there are the Romans 13, the governing authorities around us. Sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't. We have to keep in context that we do live in this civil government arena of life. We render under Caesar that which is Caesar's. But we must keep in mind, we must do the work of God. Third principle, work together as a church and a student ministry team. Again, you probably know this and you're probably doing a good job. Just as a reminder, that's all it is, just as a reminder. Work together as a church and as a ministry team. Those above you in leadership, those around you, the other ministries in the church, and your own ministry working together. Philippians 1:27. I love the verse. If you follow me at all of these NGM Focus videos, I say that verse a lot. Striving together for the faith in the advancement of the gospel. Principle number 4, everything comes down to communication. I used to say in the classroom a ton, people are down on what they're not up on. In other words, people are negative about the things they're not aware of. We have to make sure that we're communicating very, very well. Everything comes down to communication. And finally, ba-dum-bum-bum-bum, you ready? How can we best care for our students? How do we best care for our students? Because at the end of the day, we're communicating, yeah. And we're working well with our teams, yeah. And we're rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's and unto God that which is God's, yeah. And we're making disciples, yeah. But at the end of the day, how do we best care for our students? So this is where we have great conversations with them, checking in with them. And so many of you are doing this so well. So during COVID-19, God willing, post-COVID-19, these are some principles that I hope can benefit you and how we navigate through this time and any other times that God so has us going through as his people. Remember, please reach out, rich@nextgenmatters.com. Love to have your thoughts. We're going to take one more episode and we're going to close it down for a few weeks until January 2021. So we'll have Derek, who's the high school pastor, also of Cool Spring, asking that question. So we're looking forward to Derek's question this next week. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you this next week.